We really have more in common with each other than we know, because
Exactly.
the most common thing we have is the love of the Father for all of us.
Right.
Right? And it's like, I got things in common with all my siblings because we come from the same Genesis. Right? And see, what happens is when you get immersed in the fellowship of the Father, Son, and Spirit, you begin to see that everybody comes from the same Genesis. And you get filled with the love of God. And you start feeling that love of God for people. And you start finding that love shaping all your relationships. And you see how easy it is to relate to one another from that foundation. Right? Because the most basic thing you have in common is you're the God kind. And then from there, it makes it easy to see all the different ways you can connect. But if you start with the premise of how different you are, and you don't see that common ground, sometimes it's difficult to find things in common, even when there is things to enjoy. Right? It's like when love can be the center of the fellowship, it's like we're free to, and I don't mean we're free like we see we can, I mean like it gives birth to a freedom to just like enjoy one another. And just from that foundation, you see how easily it is to relate. Right? And be knit together in love.
Amen.
You know, it's like I don't do anything with crafts or any of that stuff, but man, I even feel like I have that in common just because I enjoy it.
Right.
Right? And so I can
Yeah.
sit around and listen to you guys talk about what you make and all that stuff for hours.
Right.
And I can be happy.
Right.
You know, and
God,
with
that's
you and the bikes and everything, I could sit around and listen to you talk about that and just be happy.
Right.
You
God,
know?
that's awesome.
So glory to God. Yeah, it's like when you come together based around love and the foundation of the Father's love and acceptance for everybody, it kind of changes the dynamic in a fellowship.
Yes.
Right? Because people aren't coming in trying to prove themselves.
Right.
They're not coming looking to be justified. Right? They're not comparing themselves amongst themselves. Right? We're not looking around to see how we measure up against other people. We don't feel shame based on what we've gone through or where we're at or what we might be going through. Right? Those things get removed. And when those things get removed, you can really, freedom to love one another comes into the picture. And you find great love for each other born in that. Right?
Yes, God.
And it's a beautiful thing. Glory to God. But so for so long, church was about coming in and trying to be justified.
Right.
Trying to gain approval. Trying to gain acceptance. Trying to show yourself as having been approved by God. Right? When God already showed everybody He's approved of you in Jesus. And so it's like when you come to church trying to be approved or seek approval or show yourself to be approved, then you start, it's like a competition
Right.
amongst one another.
Yeah.
Right? What ministry have you been called to? What ministry are you working in? What's
Right.
your title? How much money do you give? How much do you serve? How many meetings do you come along to? How good of friends are you with the pastor?
Right.
You see, and all those things come into play, and it's because there's a competition.
Yeah.
We're seeking to be justified by what we do, by what ministry we can work, by how much money we can give, by how many meetings we can attend, by how much we can serve. See, when you're seeking to be justified or prove that you're acceptable by those things, it creates this whole dynamic or atmosphere of competition. And the second competition comes into it, then what's happening is you're going to end up biting and devouring one another. Right? Because in a competition, you're trying to beat somebody else out.
Right.
Yeah.
Win. Gotta
You're
win.
trying to win.
Trying
And
to
in
win.
winning, you think there'll be great glory in that.
Right.
And so if that's the dynamic that church is created around, what happens is we'll end up biting and devouring one another. Right? We'll end up seeing somebody else as maybe having a little better of a slot than me. Right? And so then we want to be exalted above them. Right? We take on the mind of Cain. Right? We think that somebody in the church is above us. And the reason they are is because their fruit is better than ours. And then we start thinking about how can we be exalted above them? Right? And in our hearts, we start hating them. Right? And then the way of Cain becomes born in us.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? And all we can think about is getting above the other one, getting above the other one. And man, there's no place for us to just love each other there. There's no place for us just to be free and enjoy one another. Right? And so that's why I love what you said there, Cindy. And that's like the unity of the faith.
Right.
You know, the Son wasn't ashamed that He's the Son and He's not the Father. The Son didn't look at the Father and say, I'm not the Father, what's wrong with me? The Spirit didn't say, I'm not the Son. Man, I'm lacking some good thing.
Right.
He didn't scheme of how he could become the Son. Right? Yeah. He didn't think of how can the Son and the Spirit didn't get together and say, we're not the Father. How can we unseat the Father?
Let's take him out.
You know? You see, they have this dynamic fellowship where, man, they just live from I am, and they feel justified. Not by not just, how can I say that in human terms where it would make sense? They weren't seeking to be justified by where they could exalt themselves, right? They did judge themselves amongst themselves, right? They saw that they were all of one thing, right? It's like kind of like the body analogy where when it talks about husbands and wives, and it says, what man will despise his own body? Right? And it's like Paul talked about the gifts. Will the hand say to the leg, I don't need the leg? Will the neck say to the mouth, I don't need the mouth? Right? And so the Son doesn't despise being the Son. He doesn't think, I wish I could be the Father. That kind of thinking doesn't even enter the equation. Right? And so it's like an equality that they see, right? That they have, regardless of the position. And that's what can happen in the church is, man, the position doesn't equal the definition of who and what we are, whether we have equality or not. Right? So equality isn't found in what we can do or not do. Does that make sense? Yep. And then you're free to see everybody as equal. Right? They're all the God kind.
It goes back to separating who you are from what you do.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.